So is V-Rising worth getting in June of 2025? The short answer is yes, but of course there's a long explanation for that. So I'm going to give an explanation and why it's yes for PvE only, and why it is also a yes for those looking for PvP. What's up? My name is Dusk the Viking. You can just call me Dusk if you want. And today we're going to talk about why V-Rising is still awesome, even in after it's been out for a while. So let's start with the PvE side of things, and then we'll get into the PvP side of this game. So with PvE, is a game worth buying, at so-and-so time and so-and-so date, is a lot easier to answer. Because there could be nobody else playing the game, but it wouldn't matter because you're playing it for either a single player or co-op player experience. Unless, of course, you do want to co-op, but maybe you want to co-op with, you want to find people in the community to co-op with. If that's the case, don't worry, there's still a large number of people who play this game. But I'll get more into that on the PvP side of things. But yeah, as far as the PvE goes, there is so much customization. Like, this garden is hand-built. The location in this rainy, stormy, dreary location was what I picked out because I wanted to be close to Oakvale, which is the new content that just came out recently for the game. And that's the other thing on PvE. They literally just dropped new content for free a couple months ago. And it looks like there's plans for even more support and more content down the road. So basically, they're not really done with the game yet. There's still, stuff they plan to add to the game. But even if they decide to pull the plug on those plans and not add anything else to the game, you still have a fully fleshed out, complete game here. And the castle building alone is just absolutely cool. The stuff you can do. They had like a plague, Baron Doctor sort of whatever it was DLC pack. And so I made my castle, using a lot of the cosmetics from that. And then I got a Grim Reaper look going for my vampire. You can really decorate the crap out of everything. Like all the little banners and paintings and the floors and these little like rough carpets I put in here. You get the idea, right? Hold on here. That's we're just talking about cosmetic perspective, but the gameplay loop. This is basically a survival crafting boss fight game. And the number of bosses are there's a huge amount of bosses to fight, including some really cool ones like Domina, who has some fun voice lines, but who is also basically like a nod to the Bride of Frankenstein. And, we've got the werewolf in here, and if you keep going, there's Henry Blackbrew, who is basically a nod to Dr. Frankenstein. And they did a crossover with Castlevania, so you have Simon Belmont who roams the countrysides, and you're a vampire, so that's bad. He will mess you up. And you have Adam the Firstborn, who's basically Frankenstein, right? Now, there are a lot of other references and nods to stuff. They make all kinds of little cheeky references in the game. Some you may catch, some you may not. They're pretty subtle with a lot of this stuff, and they make sure that everything has like this V-Rising feel to it. So nothing feels out of place, but if you're paying attention, you'll catch some of the fun little like nods that they do kind of put in the game. And then you have like your final boss right here when you get to that point. And depending on what difficulty you play on, me and my mods are playing a co-op game right now. No PvP for us at this time. So we just wanted like a really awesome co-op PvE experience, and brutal difficulty basically is like a Dark Souls turned up to 11 sort of feel. We've been on Dracula for a few days now. We've really been struggling with beating the guy because, oh my god, it's really hard on brutal. So yeah, that gives you kind of an idea of what the gameplay loop looks like in the PvE, and it's just really well done. It's really well polished, and the customization and play styles are all over the place. Everything from your melee stuff like this scythe to, oh god, I don't even have a way to look at all the other weapons, but bows, crossbows, daggers, these dual scythe looking things, great sword, dual pistols are in here as well. Like, there's a whole lot of things, and depending on what weapon you have determines, you know, what abilities you have here. And then you can mix and match that with different schools of magic, and you can even mix and match the different schools of magic. Like, let's say I want that ultimate and maybe this spell, then I can do that. But I prefer to do all unholy just for thematic reasons. Like, that's really it, right? I've got this Plague Castle, I've got this Grim Reaper looking dude, I've got this awesome legendary Grim Reaper looking scythe, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna do unholy magic and do a whole theme. And it's viable, like, it's strong. I'm not really sacrificing too much power here to make this like really fun thematic, and that's a really cool thing. But you know, and then you also have passives that you can plug in. Your different spells also have gems that augment the power and add different abilities to things. You have weapon coatings, and yeah, so it's extremely in-depth if you want to get in-depth. If you don't, you can just turn the difficulty down and have a much more casual experience, and you don't really have to worry as much about that stuff. There's also potions. Yeah, you get the idea. There's a ton of stuff. Now let's talk about the PvP side of things really quick. So you've already seen everything else that the game has to offer, but you know, in addition, there is also PvP, which I'm considering getting into because I want to keep playing the game. And after we beat Dracula, you know, there's not a ton of just PvE content after you know, beat the game essentially, and I want a little bit more, and I think PvP will provide that. So the first thing we'll talk about is like the moveset and the weapons. As you can see down here in the lower right hand corner, everything's all cooldown based, and PvP relies heavily on utilizing your cooldowns and abilities and baiting out cooldowns and abilities of your opponent, dodging those with your dash, using shields to block things. If you decide to put a shield spell in there, maybe you're all offense, maybe you put 2 shield spells. There's also spell parries and all sorts of things, but it's all very timing, positioning, and cooldown based. Even your ranged weapons like your crossbows and your pistols do require that the player root themselves in place when they shoot, so that you don't have this like goofy infinite kite, you know, play style, which will either be terrible or game breaking, right? Like, those are really hard to balance. So they make it where shooting a weapon does root you in place, and these create counterplay windows, which are all very intentional. And so if you do play crossbow, it's a lot of like shielding, getting them to blow cooldowns, dashing away, taking a shot, you know, using your spells, distracting them, getting away, taking some shots. It's a game with a pretty reasonably high skill ceiling. You know, you're not doing super complicated move sets. It's just cooldown management and positioning, right? And then kind of managing this cursor, because that's the direction that your character will look, swing, and or shoot. That's pretty much it. Easy to learn, hard to master, which is the creme de la creme of really any game out there. Like, if you've made a game that is easy to learn and hard to master, then you've probably made yourself a pretty good game, and that is true of PvP and PvE, and V-Rising does that very, very well on all fronts. So yeah, is this game worth picking up in 2025? Absolutely. And again, the dev team seems like they have even more plans for the game, which is awesome. I'll say one thing in closing for PvP. Yeah, there is base rating and there is offline base rating, which I don't love, but they do a pretty good job of making it tolerable. One, sieging a base is extremely expensive, so it's not something you just run around and do. It's something that you're gonna pour some resources and put some thought into. And excuse me, and on top of that, there is equipment. Sorry, let me find the right window. There are these necklaces called soul shards, and they're very powerful. That is how I have this ultimate, the Fallen Angel, because I have this soul shard necklace. On a PvP server, there's only one of each type of shard. So if I was on a PvP server, I would be the only player able to summon this fallen angel. But here's the crazy thing. The soul shards are always made, always marked on the mini-map. So their locations are public knowledge, right? So, if I was on a PvP server, my shard would be marked here in my castle where I'm at. So having this would essentially be a challenge for people to come raid my base, with the goal of seizing that soul shard. Now, if they also ransacked my treasury and stole a bunch of my stuff, you can farm back with your NPCs pretty easily. It's really not that big of a deal to get your resources back. So the PvP and the raiding is really like a more of a for fun thing, something to do because it's cool, and the trophies are essentially like these soul shards, which you can use to basically say, yeah, look at how good I'm doing. And maybe you have stands to display them, which yes, you can craft those. Maybe you have multiples. Maybe you've got half the soul shards on the server. Like, that is one heck of a way to show off to the entire rest of the server, because anytime anybody brings up the map, they're going to see those multiple soul shards in your castle, and they're going to know, probably don't go mess with that guy, don't go mess with that castle unless you're ready to throw down. Now, as you know, in most of these games, people tend to raid offline, but you can gear out your thralls to be pretty nasty. Like, you can give them really high-end gear, and they will fight and defend your castle. There are also things that you can use to summon monsters, so you can also get a lot of monsters in your castle. Like, you can do a lot of things that make sieging your castle very, very difficult to do, along all the resources that they're going to spend just to break down some of your walls. And then how you design and lay out your castle will also make a difference. That will make it easier or harder for people to siege. So the game really has a lot of layers in every sense of everything, from just the fun design, character look, to the combat, the PvP, like, you name it. The game's got a ton of depth. It's really well polished, and it's got a really good dev team that seems to really want to support the game even further. So it's no surprise that it has still a very large active player base. Anyway, that's pretty much it for me and my thoughts on V Rising. Thanks for watching, and I hope we see you in the next one.